leadership is having that ability to inspire others, to motivate others, and to direct others. It's also that ability to know when to be a follower versus a leader.
What I see in my own personal experiences and with my clients are that you can actually have a really meaningful, deep, powerful experience in the virtual space.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a team meeting or an in-depth training or a conference, there's so much that if you're using the technology well, there's so much that can happen in that space. And I think that's really exciting.
There is nothing more frustrating than being associated with a program or a job, and you're always looking for the person that's in charge. So it's so important to show up and be present, be accessible, and approachable.
Leadership is a set of skills that can be learned and replicated. However, there are no guarantees. You know, I've seen leaders that did a lot right and didn't succeed, and I've seen leaders that did a lot wrong and did succeed. So ultimately, it's about being current, being relevant, being agile, and trying new things.
Man, I've been through so many different situations. I've seen leadership in so many different avenues, and I've studied leadership for so long, both as a practitioner, where I was running a $100 million P&L for a Fortune 500 company, or as an advisor. That I just really like being that guy that helps you think of the best, the most efficient, the most effective way to get from where you are to where you need to be.
Then to me, that's kind of like a leadership role, because what happens is, and it's not something you intentionally build, but when you find yourself in that lane of consistent support and encouragement and helping people fulfill goals, then more people end up coming to you to communicate their goals or what their questions may be on how to achieve things.
Trying to make the world a better place. It sounds like a grandiose idea, but when you think about it in terms of impacting your own community, and you can see changes that are made that where those improvements are realized, I think that's very powerful.
Your perceived flaws, the very things that people tell you are wrong with you, are going to be the very things that are truly your secret weapon. What do I mean? Your age, your race, your class, your sex, sexual orientation, how you move, if you're able, differently able. I'm telling you, all of those things are really your advantage.
So if you don't know how to serve, you don't know how to lead. And so with that, it's like, you know, what kind of servitude have you had in your life? What kind of servitude are you still willing to do even in a leadership role? And then finally, being able to listen. When you're able to listen to the group of people that you're trying to serve and lead, that makes you a better leader.
So I would encourage school leaders who are listening right now, focus on the mental well-being and health of your teachers, your students, your parents. You're doing triage work right now, but pay close attention to what this period has revealed. Did you witness more student compassion or less student compassion? Did you witness more collaboration among your teachers or less? Tragedy reveals really what you are. It's not a time to build who, it reveals who you are.
if you explored these three choices. And when we talk about the power of permission, and I just did a master class about this, I think it's been a week or so ago. And I talked about the notion of power of permission, not being this antiquated idea of permission that you're having power over, but really the power of permission about being sharing and building power together, and understanding when we put power and permission together, we're not supposed to grapple with it. We're supposed to redefine it. And permission is about the conversations that you have with yourself.
Greetings, leaders. Hey, and thank you for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1 of Leadership Is Podcast. This is titled Building Bridges and a Year of Reflection. You know, I've had 52 episodes, and I've said this to a few people, and they've, are excited for me, right, for achieving such, because there are a lot of people that start out, especially unknown people who start out with podcasts and it fizzles away. I guess from the starting out from being enthused and having the new shiny, syndrome, shiny new thing syndrome kind of deal. And so, they're genuinely excited for me for getting to 52 episodes. And I've been consistent with, recording on Tuesdays and releasing on Fridays once I've gone through the few edits and whatnot. What you heard in the beginning were snippets of some of the interviews that I've had throughout this 52 episodes, right, of Leadership Is Podcast. Now, there are times when I myself am on the podcast, doing teachings and trainings and whatnot from my own company, JM Leadership Development. But I really love listening to the perspectives of many great leaders from, a plethora, an old school word, right? A plethora, a variety of industries and genres, right? And just listening to all of the in-depth experience and wisdom and knowledge that they have to share, the soft skills, that they have to share. And so that's what this episode is really about. It's really about, reflecting on a year of Leadership Is Podcast. One of the key things that I do in my podcast is I have these 3 leadership tips. And so with a lot of my podcast guests, they have given, a lot of these, these leadership tips. And some of them I have found have been the same. There has been such a familiarity with their answers to giving 3 leadership tips. The one that I found that resonates the most consistently is being true to yourself. Being true to yourself, or as they say it, being your authentic self, being true to yourself, right? I found that to be a consistent answer throughout many, really most of my guests that have been on the show. And we have an awesome lineup for next season, for season 2 of Leadership Is Podcast, with a lot of, different guests. We're going to have some youth that are going to be on here. Now, the odd thing is I am the host of 4 different podcasts. And so therefore, really, I'm busy, but I'm so passionate. I really did not think that I would be, but this is really just another avenue of me being able to express my true passion, which is teaching. in training and presenting. And so, so I have a real passion for, producing podcasts, and I have a real passion for listening to the wonderful wisdom of my guests that come on to this show. And what I would like for you all to do, anyone that's listening to this podcast, I would like for you to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and share this out with your friends. I gotta be transparent here, got out of the hospital, going through a real serious sinus infection. Luckily or blessed that I tested negative for COVID. And so many people are going through real trials, right? But one of the things that really kept me going and motivated as I was, trying to recover is thinking about my podcast guest and my podcast audience and how much I really value the in-depth love and in-depth form of expression of appreciation and gratitude that you all give as you're listening to the people that are invited to come onto this podcast and share the wisdom that they have. I mean, I cannot say thank you enough to all of my past guests that have been on this podcast who have made time in their busy schedules to share wisdom with all of us. And so thank you all for being such great leaders and giving such wisdom. And if you all could just go back through any of my podcasts and listening to the wonderful guests that we've had on there, Leslie Lake, Keenan Lake, Sandra Grace, Kimmy Hunter, Mark Sanborn, right, with the Fred Factor, Amy Clymer of the Clymer Cards, Dr. Joseph Fox, and many, many others, that we've had on our podcast for the past 52 episodes. Season 1 was dynamic. I mean, it was just learning how to get into it. But season 2, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. And we're going to go up. We're going to keep getting better, keep having more guests on to our podcast. And listen, if you would like to sponsor our podcast, right, by having a commercial or something that'll be mentioned on our podcast, just contact me, right? 828-333-7234, or you can email us at info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com and just send us an email or just call us and let's discuss that. Let's have a conversation about what an ad would look like on my podcast, what a sponsorship would look like on my podcast. I would love to have someone like the Chamber of Commerce or Western Women's Business Center, as a sponsor of my podcast, here. So anyway, or even, local leaders, local business owners being a part of being a sponsor of Leadership Is podcast, right? And so again, we ask questions like, who are you and what you do? What is your definition of leadership? Give us 3 leadership tips and then, closing comments, contact information, and how people can help, with your program. See, my podcast is dedicated to giving vital leadership information to my audience. Now, there are many definitions of the word leadership than there are of people to actually give that definition. So many of a wide variety of perspective as it relates to leadership and leadership development. And so I'm learning a lot from my guests that are coming on to this show who are imparting such jewels of wisdom to me and to our audience. And so I want, the audience that's listening to really grow from this podcast as it relates to leadership and leadership development. I want you to really embrace that calling that you may have on you to be a leader. Go back and listen to some of my podcasts and listen to some of the answers to the questions, right? And you'll find that one of the other things that really resonates in the answers from my guest is it starts out being a great follower, right? Great leaders start out being great followers. Why? Because they hold themselves accountable to the ideals and the principles that they follow. And so therefore that first leadership is called self-leadership. And that's really where all leadership starts. That's really where all leadership starts. You got to think now that research shows that 26% of great leadership is innate, or you're born with it, or it's natural. The other 74% can be developed. How do you see this? Where do you see this? Well, you see it on the playground. That one little child that organizes the entire playground for a hopscotch game or hide and seek, right? Or even organize the entire playground against you if you're not part of their program. That's that 26% of natural born leadership that comes out, right? Then the other 74%, comes from some of the soft skills that, you can utilize in the hard skills. But this podcast, Leadership is dedicated to all things leadership. It's dedicated to you. Always remember that. Here at JM Leadership Development, our primary goal is to develop next generation leaders to leave the bench, embrace the growth mindset towards leadership, and step up. If you would like for us to do virtual assessment trainings or presentations for your hidden leaders, or keynote your next event, contact us for a free half-hour conversation at info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Visit our website, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, or call us at 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. Please subscribe to this podcast using Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts using Jason A. Muhammad or Leadership Is. Please follow us on social media. Twitter is @LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Development. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.